my fellow wizards, I wish we weren't doing this again, but it's time for another episode of Portal of Problems, because this time the event was so dysfunctional that it actually broke the entire game. And if you're new to this and want to know the backstory, you can check out my last couple videos on the subject. So, as of this week, we got another new gauntlet to try for Portal of Peril, the Spiral Cup Gauntlet, which is technically the 4th gauntlet to be added, with the previous being Sinbad and the Iron Sultan, Fantastic Voyage, and the Grand Tourney Arena, although that one was also unplayable, which I'll touch on later. However, instead of the same old bugs as the last few times, namely players failing to scale correctly and enemies duplicating all over the place, we've got some brand new ones to keep us all on our toes, one of which has now managed to affect the entire game, not just the individual gauntlet, making combat completely unplayable. Let's talk about it. Starting off this morning, players were able to enter the Spiral Cup Gauntlet as intended, but were quickly met with some pretty horrendous bugs. Beginning with the first fight with Rusty Tinderspark, there appeared to be a bugged cheat where if players didn't manage to kill all the enemies on the first turn, they began to spam tower shields for 5 to 10 minutes at a time, so you would either have to sit there trapped forever or force quit back to character selection. Then, if players were able to get past the first fight and make their way to the second to last fight in the gauntlet right before Barbarous Vanderborst, they were faced with a different annoying bug where the mobs in the fight would continuously respawn and join the fight over and over whenever players managed to defeat anyone in combat. It looks like this may be a worse version of the already existing duplicating enemies glitch from previous gauntlets, with enemies now able to join repeatedly until all the different enemy tiers are defeated, which can make fights drag on for a crazy amount of time. And while these bugs were certainly very frustrating, at least you could technically finish the gauntlet. That is until a new bug emerged that basically broke the entire game. For whatever reason, several hours after Portal of Peril launch, something happened to cause all combat in the entire game to stop working. Upon entering combat, you could select your spells as normal, but the timer would keep counting down until it reached 0, and then freeze indefinitely with the message waiting for other players appearing on the screen. You could try to back out and select other spells, but nothing happened, and your only option was to back out to the spell selection menu and flee, or force quit out of the game. Obviously, this caused chaos throughout the entire game, with people basically unable to play. Multiple people reported on the official Wiz Discord that they lost out on valuable resources like skeleton keys because the combat was bugged and they weren't able to finish boss fights. There also appeared to be PvP matches that were affected, forcing players to decide to wait out the bug or flee, potentially losing rank in the process, which probably gave everyone war flashbacks to when jade stalling was common. KI's response to this was to quickly remove Portal of Peril from being accessed, which did appear to fix combat briefly before the bug reasserted itself, making it unclear if Portal of Peril itself was the problem, or there was some other underlying issue. After several hours, it does appear that now the combat timer bug is fixed, but Portal of Peril is still not accessible, with no ETA on when that will change. According to comments from devs in the official Wiz Discord, it appears like they do know the reason for the bug but can't speak publicly on it yet, though given Portal of Peril hasn't been added back, we can somewhat safely assume it has something to do with the event. While some players will undoubtedly be calling for compensation given loss of time and resources, I wouldn't recommend anyone get their hopes up given the precedent to situations like this. All these issues are especially unfortunate given that this is actually the second new gauntlet in a row that's been unplayable at launch. Last month, the devs also had to remove another new gauntlet, Grand Tourney Arena, within hours of release for major bugs as well. However, before the gauntlet was removed, I was able to get some footage of my first attempt, and let me tell you, it's actually my quickest run of a dungeon I think ever, because as soon as I entered the dungeon, something was obviously very wrong. In the original gauntlet, the Grand Tourney Arena has 5 different fights and drops some pretty awesome energy and support gear originally from the Horde of the Hydra Pack. I actually have a full breakdown of the gauntlet and all its drops in another video if you'd like to know more. But you'll quickly see that in the Portal of Peril version, things were working a little bit differently. As usual, I got the dialogue from Sir Dunk asking if I wanted to take part in the tourney, then the speech from Sir Lionel Laughingstone, who should be my first challenger, except for some reason, Lionel was not actually there. In fact, no one was. I was straight up ghosted. The enemies would not spawn no matter how much running around I did, so I literally had to leave the dungeon and forfeit one of my 4 credits for the day because I was blocked from even attempting to complete the gauntlet, which made that version of the dungeon not just bugged, but actually unplayable. Anyone sensing a pattern yet? From looking at the many people who experienced the same problem last month in the Wiz Discord, it appeared as though entering through the sigil, whether with a group or soloing, caused the gauntlet to break and not spawn enemies except for the lowest tier of the dungeon, which is levels 30 to 50. If your character or anyone in your group was above that level and entered via the sigil, nothing would spawn for you and you'd have to leave and forfeit your credit. To test this further at the time, I also entered with my level 83 death that would fall into the middle tier for levels 50 through 100, and again, nothing spawned. After that, I tried my level 34 balance, who would fall into the lowest tier for levels 30 to 50, and the first enemy did spawn in that case, so it looked like it was confirmed that everything except the lowest tier was broken. So next, I tried Team Up, which does not use the sigil to enter the gauntlet, and actually this method did appear to work. Well, sort of. When joining via Team Up, enemies did spawn, but they were not the correct tier. I had several groups with a mixture of levels, and since I, as a max level, was in the group, everything should have automatically scaled up to the highest tier, but all the enemies had very low health and the same rank 9 and rank 10 as when my low level balance entered, which means enemies were scaling to the lowest tier rather than the highest level tier. As for the dungeon itself, it did look like some enemies had cheats, and those cheats were working as normal, but honestly it was hard to test because we were wiping everything out on the first hit, so I can't comment on any changes to cheats in that version of the gauntlet. Unlike previous bug gauntlets, enemies were not duplicating, but I have a feeling that was due to the tier scaling bug only allowing some enemies to even spawn, and not actually because the devs fixed the previous issue. So whenever they get around to fixing Grand Tourney Arena again, I'll be interested to see if the old enemy duplication bug immediately just shows up again. Anyway, within hours, KI swapped out the Grand Tourney Arena for the last gauntlet for the event, the Fantastic Voyage, and refunded player credits for the day, so it appeared that, just like Spiral Cup Gauntlet today, they realized it was broken enough that they literally needed to just take it down. Before they launched the Spiral Cup Gauntlet this week, I was hoping we might see a fixed version of Grand Tourney Arena return, but it looks like both gauntlets may be removed from the rotation indefinitely as the devs try to fix the game-breaking bugs. Right after Grand Tourney was removed, I did try out the Fantastic Voyage Gauntlet replacement to see if any changes had been made from last time, and there are a few I'd like to note. Now when you go through the dungeon, Captain Jack Cousteau follows you through and gives you a bonus 10% accuracy buff, which is kinda nice. However, previous bugs from last time are still very much present, with players failing to level scale, though the game spams you with the message, "Wizard level has been scaled," which feels a bit like gaslighting, but okay. Enemy duplication is also still an issue, especially using Team Up, with multiple mob and boss tiers appearing, and though I didn't get it on camera at the time, one of the lower levels in my group actually got pulled straight to the boss fight and was absolutely wiped while waiting for the rest of us to catch up, which was a bummer. So while Fantastic Voyage is definitely playable compared to Grand Tourney Arena and Spiral Cup, it's still filled with the exact same bugs as last time, which the devs clearly haven't gotten around to fixing yet. I have no idea what's going on with QA or playtesting over at KingsIsle, but it's getting very tiresome to constantly feel like we, the players, have to be the guinea pigs to fix these very obvious, very game-breaking bugs, not just in Portal of Peril, but now across the entire game, often with no compensation on our end for lost time or resources. So while I'm very glad that the devs were able to fix the universal combat timer bug relatively quickly, it still doesn't solve the issue with Portal of Peril, with several gauntlets essentially unplayable for the time being, and the rest filled with major bugs that affect nearly every run, and bugs even bleeding into regular combat as well, as we saw today. I really hope something changes soon because I absolutely love this game, but it feels like we haven't had a single update or new feature that hasn't been somehow bugged or broken, and it often takes way too long to fix them. Case in point, the failed player level scaling and enemy duplication bugs from previous Portal of Peril gauntlets have been problems in the game for years with older housing gauntlets in general, but KI has never taken the time to actually fix them, which is really disappointing. And even a month after Grand Tourney was pulled, we instead get Spiral Cup Gauntlet, which is also essentially unplayable. Where does it end? I don't know about you all, but I'd love to be able to jump into some new content without everything breaking for once. Anyway, let me know what you think of these issues in the comments below and what you think the devs should do to fix them. Should they remove Portal of Peril until all the bugs are actually fixed, or just have us keep repeating Sinbad and Fantastic Voyage for now? If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I hope to see you out there in the spiral, and happy questing.